All right, today we are going to take a look at division of integers and how the multiplication and division of integers are related. We're going to be talking about the multiplicative identity, which means that any number times 1 is that number. And then we are also going to be talking about multiplicative inverses, which are that q times k would equal 1, and the example there is 3 times a third would equal 1. So it's how we turn a number into 1. We often refer to it as a reciprocal. All right, so let's take a look at a few problems. So the first problem we come into contact with is on question A from page 61 in your book, and it says that we need to use what we know about fact families and multiplication to rewrite, if necessary, and then find the missing value. So I know that a negative times a negative equals a positive. So in question 1, my answer will be a positive, but then we have 6 times 13. Well, this does not need to be rewritten. I know that 6 times 13 is 78, and therefore negative 6 times a negative 13 would be a positive 78. We learned that yesterday when we talked about multiplication. Now, moving on to question 2, 6 times a negative 13. Again, using those numbers that are those strategies we learned yesterday and the day before. A positive number times a negative number would give me a negative answer. And so 6 times a negative 13 would equal a negative 78. All right, moving on to A3. A3 says that blank times negative 9 equals 108. Well, using my knowledge of fact families, I'm going to rewrite this as 108, which would be the product, divided by negative 9 is going to equal something. Well, now I have to do the division in my head, or solve it long division. So I'm going to come over here and do 108 divided by 9. And I know that 9 can go into 10 one time. That would get a 9. We'd subtract it. We'd get 18. And that 9 times 12 would give me 108. But this time I have a 108 divided by negative 9. So my answer, since I have to have two negatives, is probably going to be a negative 12. All right, so now on to number 4. 4 times blank equals a negative 48. Again, we're going to have to rewrite this one. So I come up with negative 48, which is my product, moved to the front, divided by, now we have an unknown here, or an 8. I'm going to pick the 8, and that will equal what goes in the blank. So 48 divided by 8 is 6. And since we have a negative divided by a positive, oh, there's the bell, we will make our 6 a negative 6. So, which makes sense, because if I would take a negative 6 times a positive 8, I would get negative 48, and a negative 12 times a negative 9 would equal a positive 108. All right, so those are the first little introduction problems. As you can tell from what we've done today so far, that the multiplication and division, when tied to the sign or the positive or negativity of a number, is related in division just like it is in multiplication. So let's take a look at problem B from page 61 now. B1 says that the team in problem 3.1 runs another relay. Write division sentences that express your answers to the questions below. Well, way back when we went through 3.1, or the introduction to integer multiplication, we had people running distances, which would be positive to the right, negative to the left, and if the time was in the past, it was a negative value for time, and if it was going to happen in the future, then we gave it a positive value. So let's take a look at B1. B1 says that Dwayne goes from 0 to 15 meters in 5 seconds. At what rate does he run? Well, he went 15 meters in 5 seconds, so that would be 15 meters divided by 5 seconds. Well, 15 divided by 3, whoops, not 3, 5. 15 divided by 5 equals 3. So he's running at a rate of speed that is 3 meters per second. Okay? And we go ahead and include the label. We could even write it out as meters per second. Okay? Well, that's kind of a ratio relationship here, which goes to the whole thing. If we put 15 meters over 5 seconds, that if we leave our units alone and just look at this part right here, 15 divided by 5 would equal 3, and then we'd have meters over seconds, and we would say meters per second there too. All right, so that's how fast he's running. Now, Pascal reaches negative 12 meters. So for B2, we have negative 12 meters only 3 seconds after passing 0. So we would divide his distance by 3 seconds. And 12 divided by 3 equals 4. So negative 12 divided by positive 3 would equal a negative 4 meters per second. Okay. Now, since we are talking about time here, or speed, he really is not running at negative 4, but numerically, the negative 12 meters that he runs in 3 seconds would equate to a speed of 4 meters per second. Okay, and just like up here in B1, if we express this as a ratio relationship, negative 12 meters, my pen just jacked up, over 3 seconds, we'd worry about the negative 12, so I'm going to rewrite that as negative 12. Over 3, that would give us a negative 4, and then we'd have meters per second, or meters per second. Now this speed implies that he is running to the left. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at another couple of problems to further illustrate this. So C1, we got 3 groups of problems here, and we're going to take a look. We have positive divided by a positive here, so this would be a positive divided by positive. And our answer, or our quotient, is going to be a positive number for all of these. So positive divided by positive equals a positive. Okay. Over here we have a positive number divided by a negative number, and we are going to wind up with negative quotients. So our quotient over here is always going to be a negative number. And then in group 3, we've got a negative divided by another negative, and our quotient will be positive. Okay, so let's take a look at group number 1 real quick. For C2, it says to find the quotients in the group. So 12 divided by 3 is 4. 4.5 divided by 9 would equal 0.5, or a half, 5/10. And then we have 2 1/4 divided by 1/2. Well, I'm going to have to write that one out. So 2 1/4 becomes 9/4 divided by 1/2. So 9/4 times 2 over 1 equals 18/4, which equals 4 and 2/4. So that would equal a positive 4.5. All right, so now since we are using the same numbers, all we are worried about is the sign. So again here, positive 12, let me get rid of this, positive 12 divided by a negative 3, we're going to wind up with a negative 4, because a negative times a negative should equal the positive. Okay, again here, negative 4.5 divided by 9, that would be negative 0.5. And then 2 1/4 divided by negative half would give us a negative 4 1/2. All right. Now let's take a look at group 3. Group 3 says a negative times a negative, or divided by a negative. Again, that would be a positive 4. A negative divided by a negative equals a negative or sorry, a positive 0.5. Negative 2 1/4 divided by a negative half would equal a positive 4.5. And the reason why this works is because earlier we talked about a positive times a positive equals a positive, and a negative times a negative equals a positive. And so when we write our fact family out for this right here, we would have, I'm going to take this 12, negative 12 divided by a negative 3 equals a positive 4. Okay, and we're going to write the other fact families. So that other fact family would be a negative 12 divided by a negative 4, or positive 4, would equal a negative 3. And then we'd have a negative 3 times a negative, or positive 4, equals a negative 12. And a positive 4 times a negative 3 equals negative 12. Positive times a negative equals negative. Okay. We're going to skip C3. We're not going to write 2 additional facts, but anything in group 1 would be a positive divided by a positive equaling a positive. Anything in group 2 would be a positive or a negative divided by a negative equaling a negative. Whoops, negative. And then in group 3, it would be a negative divided by negative equals positive. Okay, so our algorithm for writing and dividing division problems of rational numbers is going to be very similar to our algorithm when we multiplied. And so we are going to say that when we divide two numbers with similar signs, similar signs, that would either be a positive and a positive or a negative and a negative, that the quotient will be positive. The quotient will be positive. Okay, if we, when dividing two numbers with opposite signs, the quotient will be negative. All right, so we're going to come up with some shorthand for this. Okay, so we're going to say that a positive divided by a positive will equal a positive, and a negative divided by a negative will equal a positive. Okay, and then we are going to say that a positive divided by a negative will equal a negative, and that a negative divided by a positive will equal a negative as well. All right, so I know the video is a little bit long, but I wanted to make sure that we understood the relationship there. Take your time and go back over it if you need to. But before you come to class tomorrow, I would like for you to complete D1 and D2 on page, I gotta find it again, on page D1 and D2 on page 62, and question B3 and B4 on page 61. All right, see you in class.